Now, World Food Day is celebrated across 150 countries in order to mark the date that the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations launched back in 1945. Now, in their latest food loss index, the organization reports that between harvesting and retail level, about 14% of the food grown in Sub-Saharan Africa is lost. What's more, is said that an estimated 1/3 of the food produced globally is lost or goes to waste. In honor of World Food Day, we're speaking now to Trice Mazwi, who's an activist for organic living and climate change through her youth employment program. As a transformer, Trice helps young people build a spirit of entrepreneurship by planting trees and sourcing fruit and vegetables from their communities. Joining us too is also Water and Research Commission Professor Sylvester Mpandleni. To the both of you, thank you very much for your time. Welcome to Newsroom Africa.
Thank you, Ayanda.
Prof, let me start with you. You know, often when we talk about food, the concern is always around shortage and things like that. But that's not the full picture, is it? Sometimes it's also about the diet that people are taking. Take us through perhaps some of those immediate key areas of concern insofar as nutrition is concerned in Africa.
I think the most important thing is to understand that South Africa has got the ability to produce high-quality food, both at small scale or at commercial level. If you look at the small scale, for example, or smallholder farmers, especially those who are producing perishable products, they follow all the requirements, all the agronomic, aspects and so on. The biggest challenges that they are facing is at post-harvest stage. That's where the wastage is. And this is a problem because if you are producing perishable products and you don't have facilities to store such kind of perishable product, then it becomes a problem. Until such time wherein, we start to put agro-processing facilities, then we'll keep on talking about, food wastage, food loss, and so on. Over and above that, with regards to malnutrition and obesity, Water Research Commission is a knowledge generation organization. We have been conducting research and development for the past 48 years. We have looked at issues related to food security, nutrition, and health. And we know what is happening on the ground. We have conducted research in KwaZulu-Natal, in Eastern Cape, in Limpopo province, looking at underutilized crops. Because some of those underutilized crops, they are rich in nutrients and they use less water. Remember, South Africa falls amongst the 30 driest countries, which means that we need to make sure that we produce more food with less water. In other words, we need to use the Food and Agriculture Organization principle of producing more food with a drop of water.
Okay.
And this is key because the rainfall pattern in this country is not sufficient enough. But we need to learn from other countries like in North Africa, wherein they are getting less than 100 millimeters per annum.
Just, your work involves taking findings, for instance, by the Water Research Commission, and I presume integrating that with communities and how they function. Take us through perhaps your understanding of whether or not communities appreciate, for instance, some of the science that we're finding out about Africa being one of the driest regions in the world. Do you get the sense through your work that there's an appreciation of some of those difficulties, or has the conversation not been distilled enough to individuals in communities?
No, we talk about biodiversity, yet we will then use detergents that are going to kill the biodiversity, the water that is going to leave our houses and go into the rivers and pollute the rivers and then kill biodiversity. So the issue of water and food, you can't separate them. I support the issue of indigenous food that uses less water, because most of our water are contaminated. Right now we are talking about the shortage of food. But let's look at what food is. Food is nature. And food comes from Mother Earth. And if Mother Earth is not feeling well, and this is now going into global warming, how is a pregnant mother that is very sick is going to produce healthy children? So let's look at food. Food is trees, right? Fruit from trees. Food is the green kingdom that we've now killed the pollinators of.
Right.
Food is animals that are now malnutritioned because there is not enough biodiversity in terms of grasses. Food in the ocean is fisheries that is now poisoned with plastic and chemicals that are leaving from our rivers into the ocean. Food is crops that we plant that are poisoned with detergents that we use. Food is nutrition from the crops that are, let's look at chickens, for instance. They're supposed to take 6 months to grow, to become food. Now we grow a chicken within 2 days. It's popped, and then within 2 weeks, it's ready to eat. How can we be healthy and not be malnutrition and hungry when we've attacked the source of food? Planet Earth right now is going through global warming changes, the soil quality, the biodiversity in the soil, the biodiversity in the pollinators, the biodiversity in the fish, the food that we eat, the chickens, the crops, the species has changed. So therefore we eat, but stay hungry. Look at the size of a banana right now. Banana is huge, but the information in the banana, the DNA in the banana, the indigeneity of the banana is not there anymore because food has been commercialized. You cannot commercialize a human right. That's why you cannot commercialize air, you cannot commercialize water. We've commercialized food, and this is now, we are in an era right now where we are selling the right to be healthy. Human beings now don't have a right to be healthy because they're at the mercy of the person who is selling. If I am selling cows, I am not concerned about the quality of a cow. I'm concerned about how many cows I can sell. And therefore, what the cow is eating, how the cow is feeling, how the cow is slaughtered, how the cow is going to affect the person who's going to eat it is not factored in. And so these cows then come with hormones, they come with injections, they come with diseases that are now fed into the same human species that is now crying malnutrition and hunger. So let's look at how we are shooting ourselves in the foot, and let's look at industrial revolution. Maybe it's time for us to move away from commercializing food. Maybe it's one of the industries that are going to end up like post offices. It is time for us to embrace the change and say global warming is affecting what we eat, is affecting who we are, it's affecting our planet. Maybe let's look at how industries are contributing towards world hunger.
You've touched on so many different points, and in my head I want to attack them all at once, but let's start with this. The idea that you are what you eat, I think, is what's coming out strongly for me from what you've said. But how do you then respond to people who are trying to sell the perception that part of the reason why there's an accelerated way of getting food out there is because there's a growing demand? You know, the population is growing and more people need to be fed in much shorter spaces of time. Firstly, is that true, number one?
Yeah.
And if not, how then do we respond to the perception that's been created?
Okay, that's wonderful. First of all, mass cropping, mass agriculture is what's causing global warming. Because if you're going to take thousands of hectares and plant wheat or corn, you are killing how many trees, and what happens to the biodiversity there of trees, of plants, of pollinators, of grasses, of grasshoppers? The ecosystem there becomes annihilated to grow one crop.
Yeah.
So that is one of the industries that needs to be revolutionized. We cannot continue doing that because the planet, even the soil, you destroy the soil. After a period of time, you can't produce anything from there. So that industry needs to be revolutionized, and we need to go into monocropping, where we are using systems like permaculture, where now different biodiversity in terms of food can be grown in one area to refertilize the soil, to refertilize the green kingdom, so that we can be able to absorb all the carbon we can't keep repeating what is not working. So right now, producing food for the people is incapacitating them. It is making us sick and is destroying us as a nation. Each household needs to have its own healthy ecosystem and its own gardening so that they can be in charge and in control of what they consume, so that we're not dealing with malnutrition, yet we have full stomachs.
Yeah. Prof, let me bring you in here. I mean, just sort of alluded to it.
Let me just sort of complement some of her statement. We need to understand one thing. The population is increasing. There's no doubt about that. And at the same time, the dietary requirements from certain, groups, it's also changing. We always talk about middle class and so on.
Yes.
All of a sudden, we've got special preferences for certain crops or dietary requirements. That is not an issue. I think the critical point is that we need to produce high quality food. We need to make sure that we change the way we are doing agricultural business. She has indicated that maybe we need to look at monoculture. I slightly differ with her, considering the fact that South Africa is a dry country, and as a result of that, we need to do what we call crop diversification, which means that you put more than one crop in the same piece of land in order to minimize risk.
Okay.
I'll give you an example.
That's what you're
That's permaculture, yeah.
That's a very good example is when there's drought. Remember, drought does not hit all the crops.
Yes.
It varies from crop to crop or variety to varieties. We need to take note of that. But I wanted to emphasize the fact that majority of knowledge generation organizations, including Water Research Commission, Agriculture Research Council, and so on, they've now adopted what we call conservation agriculture, wherein they're looking at different issues, including Water Research Commission, rainwater harvesting, minimum till, zero till, in order to build carbon credits and also to reduce emissions. And some of the farmers are doing very, very well. There's no doubt about that. But it's going to take time. This thing is a process. And we need to be patient, with the farming community. Because there are various products or decision support tools that they are using. But we need to remember one thing. If you go to a farmer with a certain decision support tool and say, this tool saves water, the farmer is going to ask you, Sylvester, if you are saying it saves water, am I going to be able to make profit using this tool?
Yes.
If the answer is no, you must just forget about the adoption. And like for us, we are very lucky as Water Research Commission because we have developed various decision support tools in order to save water within the sector. And as a result of that, farmers or commodity groups are now starting to appreciate the type of work that we are doing. Over and above that, the knowledge that we are generating as an organization, we push that knowledge towards the science policy interface because that's very, very important. Policymakers cannot develop policies without looking at the latest scientific evidence. That's very, very, very critical. She spoke about global warming, climate change issues.
Sure.
So the research that we are generating as knowledge generations, it's also feed into South African position, papers in climate change negotiations. It
Absolutely.
also assists with policy formulation, strategies, plans, and so on.
Sure. Let's hold that thought for now. We'll certainly have more time to sort of delve into it in just a moment. For now, though, we do have to take a quick ad break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.